Welcome back to First Issue Club Midsummer Edition. We're here to talk about the Mighty Thor. Was that the name of the movie? Thor, Love and Thunder.
Thor, Love and Thunder. Not even close.
Inspired by the hit comic series, The Mighty Thor. Needless to say, there's going to be spoilers ahead. We're going to get into how's Phase 4 going. We're going to get into the social media discourse. We're going to get into our own personal takes and excitement about the movie. Spoilers abound. If you haven't seen the movie yet, dip out now, dummy.
If you haven't seen the movie, why are you even listening to our special Midsummer episode?
Because you don't want to go see it, maybe?
Oh, that's a good idea.
You want to see it through the eyes of First Issue Club? That's fine with us.
I actually
Stick around
respect
for
that. I respect the person that's listening to this and not watching it. That's a bold move. It's what I would do. Budget King endorses that.
Great. Stick around if you're chaotic. Before we get into it, let's talk about the comic book that inspired the movie. What's your history with Jane Foster as Thor?
Very closely tied with you, Mike DeStacy, because we were living in the same apartment building at the time when the Jason Aaron God Butcher run was happening. And so we were geeked out on that, and that bled right into Jane Foster and Mighty Thor. And people may not remember this, but when that happened, there was a huge controversy in the comic book world that,
Yeah, wasn't Jason Aaron on like Fox News or something?
Yeah.
Like, defending it?
I think you're right.
Yeah,
actually.
because Thor now went by Odinson in the comic, and Jane Foster was known as Thor, and then they ultimately changed it to Mighty Thor.
Yeah, I think that's part of why I hold the comic run so dear, is that because there was just so much social discussion about it, and it felt like a sticking point for people who weren't sexist.
Yeah.
to be like, yeah, this is what's awesome about this comic, and some of the points it's making about not calling her She-Thor.
Right.
And
yeah, exactly.
being upfront about that were great. I was into it. I know
Lady Thor.
you and me, BK, were both into Original Sin. I don't know if you were.
I got into it after the fact.
Yeah, so this was Jason Aaron's summer Marvel event that they were doing. It was like 8 to 12 issues. And in that series, we saw the Watcher die and a handful of other things, but Thor became unworthy in that run and lost the hammer. And then we had the great surprise reveal of Jane Foster as Thor in the interim there before the Mighty Thor started.
And I think that this was one of the first hallmarks of like Marvel dipping its toe and being like liberal and getting like maybe like
Totally.
Comic Gates and SJW kind of calling them out and stuff. And so I loved it for that reason of like, it was like, it felt like the shifting of Marvel. You could watch it happen.
Yep.
In real time. I believe 2014 is when this run was around.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
So fitting that there was controversy with Jane Foster as Thor in the comics. There's a lot of controversy surrounding this movie. What's Twitter got to say?
So most of it is around Taika. So if you don't know, he's in an open marriage. I believe he's like been dating Orca.
Rita Orta.
There we go.
Orca.
I don't know his love life, but the controversy is that he may be bisexual. I don't even know, but he definitely in the pirate show that he was in has a male kiss, and that
Our Flag Means Death. It's
there
on
we
HBO.
go. There we go. I've heard it's good.
It's very good.
Among the many things that this man is doing, and that this movie was, depending on where you're landing, either inappropriately representational of queer, was too queer, or was not done by the right queer person as the director, or maybe was.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah. I've seen full articles on all the spectrums of this conversation.
If you're saying this movie is too queer, I don't know what your barometer is, because I don't think it was
so
in any way pandering.
I felt like there was an eyedropper of a rainbow in this movie.
Right,
It was barely queer at all.
I was expecting way more.
And
to be
while
honest.
I did appreciate the nods and was like, okay, finally acknowledgement of some things in an MCU movie, and that's something that's been lacking. I wasn't like, this is bursting at the seams.
And it's like Valkyrie already queer. We already knew that. It's already established. And then Taika's character, Rockman, I don't know his name.
Korg.
Him being, I guess, gay, depending on like...
Well, their species is all male.
Right. Oh, okay.
So, I mean, technically, yes, we would identify that as a male and a male entering a relationship as homosexual or gay, but...
And was there something else that was very queer that we missed? It's mostly Valkyrie, right?
There was supposedly hints that Thor was like love, bisexual or in love with Peter Quill.
Got it. Yeah, okay.
Because of the companionship that they had on the ship, and then they kind of formed a strong brotherhood. Okay.
I didn't read that at all.
People were, I think, reading way into that online.
But I also, did you guys go into this movie thinking it's going to make a huge statement and there's like, it's being released around Pride and
no, I didn't think
that was going to be a part of this.
So some of my confusion was the Wonder Woman pre-up for the 1984 one, and then the synonymous of like the way that they did this with all of the like Guns N' Roses and like hair metal launch of this is like, I kind of thought this was going to be an 80s hair metal homage, and that's what I thought all of the rainbow pride-ness was just like, oh, remember when 80s were like, when hair metal, which is like the gayest music, was like in
vogue.
Yeah, like, and it was going to be like that. That was my tonal like entry point. But great. We also watched this and didn't have, so we're talking about Monday Twitter, by the way, for just reference. Like, so weekend happens, Monday Twitter comes along, and then it's this queer discussion on the movie. Seeing it in a vacuum without that Twitter conversation, I was like, cool that they like upped the ante a little bit on some of the gay relationships, on some of the queer relationships. Like, I was like, but I wasn't like, I just walked away of like the queer trophy winning Marvel movie.
Yes, certainly. I mean, I don't think they really pushed any boundaries or pushed the envelope any further for any character in particular. I mean, there obviously shouldn't be any like protest for this movie from any churches or, any conservative groups or anything.
No,
because that would be outlandish. But I do think that Feige and the Marvel Disney entity is kind of flirting with the idea of getting people comfortable with gay and queer characters, and they're doing it slower than I want them to, and they're doing it slower than a lot of people want them to. But I think in this dynamic that we live in the world that we live in, Marvel stupidly has to think about the foreign market of the film. And there are, like, Saudi Arabia didn't play this movie at all.
Oh, and there was that happened with the Star Wars movie where they took the kiss out.
Yes.
in the Chinese version.
Right. So some of those moments that we're experiencing now seem a little fake and like almost like queer baiting of just like, hey, we put it in here, but only for certain audiences, and we take it out for other audiences so we can make money.
Okay.
And so it doesn't seem genuine.
Okay.
And until we had the full on. In Eternals, like, they were husbands, and we saw them kiss, and like that was a pivotal part in the movie. I think that movie also did not play in Saudi Arabia and other countries that ban that type of material on their screens, but I mean we're seeing steps in the right direction.
So the headline is that there's a whole spectrum of like a queer conversation, and I was seeing a lot of like wasn't queer enough, or like wasn't queerly was queer appropriation.
Honestly, from the director and from the actors in it, I agree. I thought this was going to be a very proud movie of queer and gay and lesbian characters, but we just didn't see that portrayed.
So that's all that headline is. I think like I'm happy for Marvel to move the step forward. Could have gone full throttle. Every character could have been queer. That would have been fine.
For a movie that had zero restraint everywhere else, I was expecting it to do the same thing with the relationships.
Should we dip into some more headlines?
Sure.
So this one I understand a little bit less. There's a reaction video of Taika saying like making fun of the special effects.
Yeah, so it's Taika just like kind of like riffing and making fun of like how the special effects don't look good, and like how the digital animators or whatever just like, we got lazier, like they didn't do a good job. And the people that worked on the movie obviously caught wind of it because it's just like it's now like a promotional thing on Marvel Twitter.
Yeah.
And they're just like, and the conversation now is Marvel is terrible to work for if you're a VFX animator.
Okay.
Because they put you on such tight constraints. And
then
so that video was promoted by Marvel Twitter, which is funny.
I haven't seen it. But it sounds like he wasn't joking.
I think either the joke didn't land.
I can't imagine he would have said that seriously.
Yeah, it was a bad call to make the video and an even worse call to post it on social media.
Yeah. By Marvel. So he must be joking then. So then that spins out to him being asked, well, is there a director's cut? What would you have done differently, right? And in I think it's Hollywood Reporter interview, he's like, director's cuts are stupid. Nobody should watch them. That is definitely a Scott Snyder or not Scott.
Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder. There we go.
That is not a Scott Snyder dig. Scott, we are huge fans of yours.
Scott, you're good. That's a Zack Snyder dig on Justice League.
Yes.
And then he's basically saying like they're trash. Directors need to be like reined in. If they edited the movies would be bad. Mm-hmm. And they're like get into a little bit further, and he's like, yeah, I guess if I would have changed it, I would have like put a couple more jokes in that were on the editing floor. But that's like it.
Yeah.
And I actually really respect that take. To be like, instead of like the Zack Snyder thing where it's like, well, actually my version was better, so they fucking Warner Brothers.
Yeah, because I don't want to see on Twitter for the next 5 years release the Taika cut.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Because like the spin out from the whole Zack Snyder thing of like the Snyder cut and like just creating this rabid fan base just makes me sick, and I don't want it to spill out into other movies that people think that there's better.
The only thing that would be cool about that is if, like the Snyder cut, how we got it early before anybody else, and we're able to like
read from the script and show clips.
Yeah, if we could do that, then if we sign on for that, that would be.
Speaking of Zack Snyder, when is Ezra Miller just going to be arrested and like taken out of public?
I hope never, because he just gives and gives and gives to the headline.
The dude is like a loose cannon.
He's going to barbecues.
He is just a mess of a human. And Ezra, I know you're listening. Please go get help.
Or don't hurt anybody, but keep on acting a fool.
Yeah, just pull a Bam Margera. Just be wacky, but don't hurt anybody.
Right.
There's also a bunch of conversation surrounding the stars' bodies.
Oh, yeah.
We got conservatives mad that we showed a naked man. And then,
it's just butt cheeks.
And then we got other people going gaga over Natalie Portman's beefy arms.
Mm-hmm.
Ripped. And I thought Natalie Portman looked fabulous, looked great. I didn't like.
I think everyone does.
Everyone looks good.
Consensus. Everyone's whoa. Yeah. Natalie Portman was like put on some muscle and was like, looked fucking great as a superhero.
I wasn't like she beefcaked out. I think the pre-hype that I was seeing about it beforehand, I was thinking like muscle model.
Like she was gonna look like China from the WWE,
right? Yeah.
Just totally swole.
R.I.P. man.
No, but
rest in peace.
My thing is just that I appreciate that they didn't do this female superhero movie where she was like a toothpick.
Yeah.
Because normally, I think it's safe to say women in Hollywood are told to get as small as possible.
Teeny tiny.
But she's playing a superhero, and she's playing a traditionally muscular, beefy superhero. And you can tell she bulked up for it. And that was fucking awesome to like ask a Hollywood celebrity to put on weight.
Yeah.
To do this movie.
Eat a biscuit.
I think Captain Marvel had a similar look though. Like I think we're kind of blowing this out of proportion a little bit. Like
however, I agree and disagree at the same time because Jane Foster has like really exposed arms and like it's more you get to see more of it and like it's more of a defining characteristic. While Captain Marvel is strong and has muscle, like I think with the Jane Foster character there's such that juxtaposition between Jane Foster without Mjolnir and Jane Foster with Mjolnir you get that kind of contrast that I think is really important to show her that she is big and strong and sometimes strength doesn't come from muscle, but in this case it do.
Thanks for telling us where strength can also come from.
You're welcome.
So the hate goblin side of this that I posed was people were mad that Chris Hemsworth was nude. And I don't know if you guys have heard this, but a lot of people's argument is if that was a woman, liberals would have been mad about it.
I doubt it.
And that's why conservatives are mad that they showed a nude man.
If that was Natalie Portman's butt, I wouldn't have raised a single stink.
Wait, so they're mad at the hypothetical.
Yes, they're mad at the hypothetical that people weren't pissed or people were excited about Chris Hemsworth's nudity.
They're mad that we would have been mad in an alternate timeline if that was Natalie Portman.
Where was he naked?
In the metropolis or the omnipotent city.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Zeus blows his clothes off with a flick.
I did not think we were going to see his cheeks.
And I was like, it's good that this is documented because
the lunacy?
This guy is in peak condition.
Oh, yeah.
And he was just on display.
Uh-huh.
He was fine with doing it.
Oh, yeah.
So we put it in there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like the guy's more ripped than like anyone's ever been.
Yeah.
And his body was like insane.
Yeah.
If I was him, I'd be like, yes, it's on public record.
Yeah.
I never looked fucking better than I looked that day.
I got more cake than a bakery. Like, let's show it off.
A huge movie. And I think there's something to be said. And there was like a fun commentary for me about like movies have objectified women for the history of cinema.
Yeah, since the beginning.
And I've literally never, even in the movies that are like, ooh la la, beefcakes, I've never seen it to that extent. Mm-hmm. That was like a guy's fully nude on display and women are like, ga ga ga.
Maybe Magic Mike.
Magic Mike, sure.
But this was the Marvel version of Magic Mike.
So in that respect, I was like, I expected the movie to do some things with gender, knowing that we were going into a role reversal of Jane Foster as Thor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that we did get some of those things where Thor was the one longing for Jane, and
sure,
he was the beefcake put on display.
Yep.
He was the slab of meat.
And what a slab.
So, I don't know. That was my opinion on it.
I find the argument of conservative media that it's such a bonkers statement of just like, listen, no one's mad about this, but if it was a woman, you guys would have been pissed. And that's why we're having this 45-minute news segment right now on a very abstract hypothetical. And it's just ludicrous.
Yeah.
So, wow. I haven't heard anyone complain about Chris Hemsworth and his bottom in the movie.
So
you're probably not on Parler.
Yeah.
Please tell me you are not.
Get back on Parler.
Let me hop on Parler real quick. They are livid.
I just want to be clear, I'm not on Parler.
Okay, for the record.
I love that we have such a desert landscape of movies right now that like this is all the only movie people are talking about right now.
Yeah. People are over Maverick. They want to talk about Thor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and the world's just so shitty right now. It's just like there's something to draw our focus.
Unbelievable amount of news that happened last week with Shinzo Abe and Boris Johnson is just like, I can't believe that the world's still going on.
My kid's going to need like a new history book.
Absolutely.
They're like updated by the minute now. These fucking books. They're giving them tablets.
An entire volume of they have to add a 13th grade.
Seriously. Just to cover 2020 and 2022.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy.
What happened? Well, fucking everything apparently.
Yeah.
Chapter 16, Thor's ass.
All right, do we want to get into our own takes?
Yeah.
What we thought.
It's the reason people are here.
What do you guys think the level of humor? Did it hit for you? Too much? Not enough?
Okay, here's one thing that I think affected it for me greatly. We went with our friend who is the loudest laugher that I know.
He was so loud, yeah.
And so the movie felt funnier than
because you're next to a good laugher?
Because I was next to a great laugher.
I get that.
And I feel like I also wanted it to be a comedy. Like I knew what I was getting into. And
because of Ragnarok.
Yeah, because of Ragnarok, because of Taika. And I felt like his laughs were definitely happening the whole movie, so I felt great. I felt happy. And like, but they could have been more. And the one thing I will say that I have seen criticism of Taika is that he put his own Rock character in it too much.
Yeah,
and not enough Jane Foster.
Yeah, and so that the Rock guy, say his name again.
Korg.
Not
a hard one.
Yeah, Korg was in it too much, and so that like he was like trying to be Yuckster, I guess. But I mean, Taika's work in general. I don't think this is the worst movie he's made, only because only because the rest of his movies are so good.
That's such a great way to put it. Because I completely agree with you. This is his worst movie he's ever made, only because the other things he's made has been completely genius.
Right.
I liked the humor in the movie. I thought there were some of it was just a bit too over the top or slapstick for me, or there are some moments that I think really would have gotten me, but I think the expectation out of Ragnarok was that this movie was going to be laugh out loud funny.
Mm-hmm.
So they pumped the trailer full of jokes and yucks. And by the time we got to the movie, we'd seen a lot of that stuff in the trailer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Part of what was so delightful about Ragnarok was we weren't expecting it to be a comedy.
Element of surprise.
And I wish they would have marketed the movie as more of like a straightforward superhero movie, so I could have seen like bulbous Thor doing like the massive chains, like the guy does ropes in the gym.
Sure.
Like that's such a funny visual joke, but that whole set piece like didn't work because I'd seen it 100 times before I got to the movie. You know what I mean? But I thought there were a lot of like really funny, nuanced moments between things that were almost hard to catch because there was so much like really big over the top humor. But small complaint from me. I think as this movie ages, the more I'll like it.
Right. I mean, I had to pull my jaw off the floor with Jeff Goldblum in Ragnarok.
He was amazing in that.
Yeah.
How funny and great it was. There was never a moment with this at the same level of like.
And we had no idea what to expect with like the tonality of the Hulk, just because that movie really benefited from none of the movies preceding it
being like that,
treating the main Avengers as buffoons.
Right.
So those moments were just like...
It's like they were Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, like so unexpected and wild. So hard to match that again or deliver that surprise.
I'm in agreement with you guys. Like your viewing experience, I also had people in the theater who this was their first movie ever. And so whenever a joke happened, it was the best joke they've ever seen. And that got tiresome pretty quick, but... it was good that they were enjoying it as much as they humanly could. Where the humor kicked off for me was the smaller jokes or the less subtle ones. Like my favorite joke, and my favorite reoccurring joke was the kind of relationship between Thor and the Hammers and how the Hammers were like exes or current girlfriends and how they were just kind of like
I loved that,
battling for Thor's attention. And I thought that was great because it played off of Jane and Thor and how their relationship was going. And I just thought that was a masterful reoccurring joke.
When you just see Chris Hemsworth just kind of stone-faced staring on, and then the axe just like very slowly drifts into screen.
I thought that was great because it gave them like personalities.
Right.
And it really solidifies in the movie that like they do have their own personalities and mindsets of like, because like Mjolnir basically chose Jane to help her because Thor said protect her at all costs. Later in the movie, we find out. And I thought that was great that they gave these inanimate objects a vital part of this movie.
The flashback relationship scenes were kind of fun and funny too.
They gave great context of how they met their demise in the relationship.
Yeah, right. And kind of tragic, a little emotional. It did a lot of exposition in a short amount of time in a kind of fun way.
Yeah, and like I think everyone can relate to that relationship. You have these two, professional adults in their careers one being a superhero and one being like an astrophysicist.
They're both absolute fucking 10s.
Oh my god! I bet the sex was
relate,
amazing.
I can relate to everything so far.
Yeah,
they broke beds every night. Like they were at IKEA every weekend buying in bulk. I need the Flurgensturgen in 10 of them.
So, but what's relatable about that relationship? Anything? That was that was the joke.
Yeah, everything really. I found okay. So for me, the first act was stuck in the mud. It was really spinning its wheels.
Well, I mean, to me,
trying to get traction.
If you're saying that we had like 30 minutes of just like lightning speed exposition, I agree with you.
The first act was like hitting you over the head with humor.
Like this. And like, I love that they start with Guardians, like being in it as like a fun cameo or whatever. But that's their proudest moment. The next 30 minutes are literally just being like breakneck speed into why Jane is now grabbing Mjolnir.
Mm-hmm. It was going so fast.
Quick.
So what do we feel then about like the length of the movie as a whole and
and
how much goes pushed into it?
Honestly, I thought the movie was shorter than I expected.
It was right at 2 hours, I think.
When it ended, I was just like, "Oh my god, I've been here for how long?"
Yeah.
Like, this should have been way longer.
I think so. People are not fond of this movie right now. There are some defenders that's like it's great. Nobody's saying it's better than Ragnarok, and some people are just saying it's flat out bad. I think it's because most people judge a movie in the first 30 minutes.
Dead on.
And the first 30 minutes are the worst part of this movie. The movie gets better from that 30 minutes.
Yes. This movie benefits from its character progression and the interaction and the relationships born out of that.
Yeah. I also think like people are skipping over the Disney World of Valhalla like aspect
that's a great minor
funny,
detail.
So interesting and creative and awesome, but it's like it gets lost a little bit.
I wonder if like a producer came in and was like saw a rough cut of this film and was like, Taika, you got to make it funnier. Can we punch this up a little bit? Because there are these small details and moments in the film you're just like, this is fucking brilliant. And like such a throwaway line or detail that like is so wonderful and needed to be focused on more.
Did I call it wrong? Is it Ragnarok on Earth or is it Valhalla?
It's new. Ragnarok is the event that happens.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like Ragnarok is the destruction of Asgard.
Valhalla is where the gods go when they die.
Yes.
Asgard
is
the
their
place
home.
they lived that was destroyed. On Earth, New Asgard is the town.
There we go. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah. So the New Asgard is the Disney World version.
Mm-hmm.
Great joke. Really funny. Really.
It's like off of a Carnival cruise or something.
Yeah.
Like you can go there and visit. It's so funny.
It honestly felt like making fun of Universal Studios in some ways too, with like their recreation of movies, which I love Disney making fun of Universal Studios.
Yeah, I love. It was very self-deprecating at parts.
Like Harry Potter World.
Yeah, and I loved how they carried on the gimmick of Matt Damon being in the play.
Oh God, that's so good. Yeah.
And and Melissa McCarthy was Hela.
Okay, I had totally forgot about Melissa McCarthy and Matt Damon being in this. That was fucking brilliant.
I loved the callback. And like I love that it was Melissa McCarthy who was Hela because she's known for being like pigeonholed into these like goofier roles in movies or whatever, and like this is like just her being able to like let loose and just really, be a dork.
Yeah. So okay, let's get into just like we'll move into like did the plot work for you, the general like story unfolding since we've already been talking about that.
I think my thing was the plot I expected to be so focused around Jane, and it was more around Gore and getting the kids back.
Right.
I thought the intro with Gore was great, and they set up like
love that,
an amazing villain that way, and he was such a creep show.
Yes.
To the kids, when he tore that
head off of a creature.
That worm. I was like, I love this villain. It's great. Yeah. And then the battle scenes they had were fantastic. We'll get to like action stuff later, but I think I had some trouble with the story just because of the plot, just because of how many things were going on in it. Like we've got to get to eternity, to make a wish. We've got Gore and his daughter and their story and killing all of the gods. Mm-hmm. We've got
Zeus, which is a red herring.
Yeah, exactly right. Just so much going on in this movie.
And then we have like, I think the audience is led to believe that Jane Foster is going to overcome cancer, too. So you have like,
because they haven't read the books.
You have the villain of cancer coming too. So like,
sure. And I like that it wasn't like, I think it would have been distasteful to be like, superhero magic cured your cancer.
Yeah.
So I like
in an out of a comic book scenario, 100%.
I think it was cool that she had her moment to do what she thought was right and went out in a blaze of glory. And if we don't see that character again, went out in an awesome way. So I'm happy with Jane's death. I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not glad that she's leaving the franchise potentially, but I thought they did that well. I also think this movie should have picked one of these things and focused on it a little more. Like I would have loved to have seen more gore.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or I would have loved to have seen us focus on Jane's journey a little more, or her become Thor, right?
Right.
Like I think had that not been a part of the marketing, that this was Natalie Portman as Thor.
Yeah. One time only.
Then it would have been really cool to have her show up in the middle of a battle and be like, she catches the hammer and you're like, holy shit, Jane is Thor.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good point.
That would have been amazing.
That's where they fucked up by telling us that she's going to be in it.
Since we knew she was going to be in it, show us her becoming Thor.
Yeah.
Like, show more of that journey.
Yeah.
Instead of it just being like a side note and just like, oop, we're there all of a sudden. Like, we really crammed what could have been an hour and a half of the movie into 30 minutes.
And to that point, the people that are saying this movie is great almost always reference Christian Bale.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the God Butcher got the best story arc. I mean, got the most dedication to the movie, and his performance was just odd. And the way they altered it.
Yeah, well, I mean, he got the primary storyline.
Right.
It was, I mean,
and then
it's the most fleshed out.
And I think Russell Crowe is to Jeff Goldblum. It's like, it's like, oh,
Russell Crowe was so good.
He was awesome in it, and it just is like he's this self-contained thing.
I couldn't peg his accent. I didn't know what he was trying to do with that.
Made it better, I think.
You're right.
So absurd.
I think it's like
hey, send me a Zeus.
Yeah.
He was going for like pizza Greek.
Yeah.
He's like Little Caesars up there.
Yeah.
You could tell that when he was doing the tricks with the lightning bolt, that was the funniest part of the movie for me. And just imagining him like in front of a green screen,
doing take after
just being
take.
like flicking his fingers around, like however. Like I really think that the direction that he got was to just like pretend you're throwing it in the air and like whipping things around and just go for like 4 minutes straight.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll worry about it in VFX later because
we'll do it in post.
Just like the silliness of his hand motions, like just like not quite matching up with like the craziness that's going on with the lightning bolts was so funny.
Well, at one point he treated it like a baton and was just twirling around his sides of his body.
So think about this too. Christian Bale and Russell Crowe both almost had career-ending ego movies.
Yeah.
Master and Commander for
Christian Bale,
for Russell Crowe.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then Terminator for Christian Bale, where you like yelled at the person.
Yep.
They are probably the most egocentric actors on Earth that you could get. I think it says something they're never in a scene together. But like the fact that
they weren't even told that each other were in the movie,
right? That Taika is like could rustle them up. Did you also know that Chris Hemsworth selected Taika?
Oh no!
So he was like,
"I'll do another Thor movie." If you get Taika Waititi.
I think the legend goes is that
it's told.
So it's told is he was like, he was saying he couldn't do another Thor movie the way they were headed, and he like selected Taika,
okay.
and they did it together. There's some like co-doing of Ragnarok and Chris together in Ragnarok.
Yeah, I believe that.
So, good job, Chris.
Thank you, Chris Hemsworth.
Oh, did one of you make the point of Gore with the Necro Sword when he kills that god at the beginning, that the gold blood was something they needed to do for it to be in like a Disney movie and get the rating,
but that's
rating that it got?
Oh, that I did, yeah. So when they have the gold blood, they basically make it like Kill Bill. It's just straight up like so violent, but it's like because it's gold blood, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like
if it's like sprinkles or rainbows,
it's like cartoony that way, right?
Yeah,
so you get this like really brutal scene in a PG-13 movie.
And our friend that was sitting next to us, shout out to John, was just like, "Oh my God, the violence is awesome." And I was thinking like, this is like Kill Bill. Like it does look like, if you remember that Kill Bill just reads an absurdity, but because it's real blood,
it got that R rating.
Yeah, we get away with.
I think, and you bring up the Necro Sword. Those of us who have read the Venom run know that the Necro Sword is very closely tied to Venom and Null.
Yep.
So that's kind of a cool nod to the Marvel Comics, and who knows if eventually we may see Null, God knows, 10, 15 years from now, but kind of a neat nod of just like it's been introduced to the MCU, so doors are wide open.
Okay, speaking of introducing things to the MCU and the plot, did you guys know going into this movie that Eternity was a part of it?
So in the trailers, someone had did like the breakdown of just like they're in the Hall of Gods.
Yeah.
So you saw statues of Uatu and the Living Tribune, and like Death was in there as well.
Yeah.
And someone was just like, that one looks like Eternity. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I thought that's
just gonna be
it.
Yeah.
The reveal of Eternal was insane. I loved it. I thought it was perfectly done.
I thought the design was fucking sick.
It was nutso.
I like that they just went full-blown silhouette like in the comics. Like, that was rad.
I mean, they could have fucked up and had like Zach Galifianakis voicing Eternity or some shit. Like, I'm glad it didn't talk.
Yes.
Nothing.
Yes.
It just sat there.
There were also some like statues that had like a partial mask. And I was like, allusions to the Eternity mask, which is really sick.
Yes.
So I was stoked on that.
It was, and it was so silly because like while I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, thank God, I bought Eternity's first appearance 5 months ago on a whim, not knowing anything. And I'm like, I'm sure that issue is through the goddamn roof right now.
I'm sure it is.
What I love about the Thor movies, too, is that because Ragnarok was such a criticism of the MCU in some ways, or a departure, whichever way you want to see it.
I think it was a departure and like kind of like a critique of like, these superhero movies should be a little outlandish because like,
or we need to make Thor funny. I don't think there's the expectation in Thor movies now to do all these nods to the comic heads. So when they do it, it works a lot better because they're just like, oh, cool, actually, instead of being like,
They're doing better with how and when they make nods to comic book stuff.
Yeah,
because there's.
Well, now that Stan Lee's dead, how they got...
Well, I'll say early on in MCU movies, there are some decisions that they make that you're just like, okay, they did that because of the comic book, but it just doesn't make sense and it makes for a worse movie. Like, there are times when you need to break
format.
Like, I always go to Black Widow's hair. Looks so shitty.
And Captain America.
in like so many of these movies. It's like such a shitty wig.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cartoony, crazy red.
Yeah.
It just looks awful. And it's like, she was a cartoon character in the comics. Like, no real person has hair that looks like that. We're not going to be mad as viewers if you change it to look like kind of real.
Also, it's not vital that her hair is red.
Not at all.
It's like if they made like the Hulk yellow, we kind of have an issue. But
I know.
like her hair isn't like red. Who gives a shit?
And I know that's a small visual point, but I think there have been plot points in movies or like points of exploration in all kinds of Marvel movies, and the Sony ones do kind of a bad job at it, where like
shocker,
Morbius like takes place on like the boat in like the beginning of it because of his origin story in the comics, and it's like, we don't care,
and no one knows that.
Hardly anyone knows that his like origin was on a boat that you like found him in like the middle of the ocean. Like,
the important thing is he says it's Morbin time in the movie, like he says in the comics.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a tough line that nobody wants to walk, of like, you have to keep your core audience, make them happy, and what can you change? You probably have to like.
I think the MCU has evolved above that. Their core audience is
they
now
have their own core audience.
Yeah, it's now kids and other people who just like the movies.
And also, like, there's no like, even you can't even call this the 2014 run. I mean, like, because there's borrowings of like, yes, Jane Foster is Thor, but then there's so many other storylines that like happen in it that it's like there's nobody could turn to you and be like, well, what happened in the comics? And it's like,
none of this.
Yeah.
About nothing.
So,
do you guys want to talk about the ending or any of the post-credit stuff before we do like grades?
Oh, yeah.
I want to say one of my favorite parts of this movie was one of the most kind of daring, maybe a stretch of a word, but some of the most daring things I've seen in the cinematic universe for Marvel is the black and white shadow zone that they went into.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Some of the best cinematography that the Marvel, Disney, whatever has done in a long time really kept my attention. And like, it almost was like a 1960s like noir kind of like Saturday morning like monster movie, because like these shadow beasts look like they're like made out of clay, and like it's almost like Beetlejuice set in space. It was so cool, so completely different than what we've seen before. And like, I'll give another nod to Christian Bale. Like, I wish he was in it more, because he fucking destroyed this role. It was so good.
He's so good.
I mean, that's just what I want to say. One last thing. That's one last thing that stood out to me as just like completely bonkers, and people should really be focusing on that cool scene.
I think like the hair metal or like the heavy metal comic, like from the 80s or whatever type of aesthetic that they were going for, that being both soundtrack and like aesthetic, I think they like got, but nobody cared once they got to the movie. They weren't like, they forgot that was like a thing.
Do we need 5 Guns N' Roses songs?
No.
Like the Ragnarok worked because it was like a plethora of 70s and 80s music, kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, this just like focused on like, hey, Guns N' Roses, like they're 80s.
After we got done with it, I turned to Mike and I was like, the licensing alone on the fucking music for this probably broke the goddamn budget. And it's like, it would have been better had you just gone like indie or like, well, I hate to say it, but Rise of Gru. You know, slap that soundtrack together.
The Men Gentlemen.
Yeah. So that, and then the other thing I will say, like, I did tear up at the ode to like the I'm not like Lady Thor, I'm like the Mighty Thor, or you can call me Dr. Jane Foster.
Yeah.
I was just like, that's cool. As corny and cheesy as it was, which I'm probably in the minority of liking that scene, it felt like a good wrap up of the like, fuck you. A good way to like.
Yeah, totally.
So
I would agree to that. The Kid Army was a little much, but
I loved the Kid Army.
God damn it.
I thought that was great.
The movie,
that was like, I was like, yes.
I think the movie was good. I
don't think we're disagreeing here.
I know, but I feel like we're coming up against like people like if you take a peek on Twitter, you would be led to believe this is as bad as Wonder Woman.
Or no, this movie is fine with a capital F.
It's just not as good as Ragnarok, but it's not worse than 1 and 2. It's not a bad MCU movie.
They for me, it's just like they didn't break the mold, like with Ragnarok, and I was expecting. I was just like, well, is Taika gonna try new stuff, like because he was like able to like try new and exciting things with Ragnarok? I was like, surely he'll do some crazier stuff or some like different techniques, and it was just like I felt like I was getting like the same movie in the same tone. I was just like, I've seen this before.
Can I say this? I think had they known the cultural chokehold that Stranger Things has had on the world with Kate Bush and now Metallica, I think they would have changed things up and been like, oh shit, that's how things go now. Like that's how it's done, and like done a little bit more of that, like integration rather than like the culture being like a shimmer polish.
Explain that more.
So like Stranger Things, like in my opinion, popularizes D&D with season 1.
Yes, 100%.
Right? Like the great onslaught of D&D. Now we get to season 4. Kate Bush is literally the top of the charts.
Making millions.
Yeah, again. Metallica is getting that whole thing. And it's like the way that cultural discoveries happen from media, the zeitgeist of stuff is like, I think people are like, oh shit, there's no difference between Stranger Things and TikTok now, of like how people are like getting there, like, and I think like Thor didn't capitalize on that moment, by just like having like these over the top soundtracks and like like I think they could have like done more with that because people were willing to like buy into it.
Well, this soundtrack was it was like Iron Man 2 where AC/DC did the whole fucking thing. It's like this is just a Guns N' Roses greatest hits album. Like I personally
there's no discovery.
Fucking hate Guns N' Roses.
I do too.
And like the way he doubled down on that, I don't know if he was trying to do like a joke of just like it gets funnier each time you hear a different Guns N' Roses song, but it's just like you have so many better songs to choose from that era to like create different emotions. Like, get away from it.
Yeah, it really was. It's four Guns N' Roses song, a Kiss song, Poison, Pat Benatar, Dio, which is like
hell
yeah, fine, and then that's it, I guess. But that's just, I don't know. So that's a dumb take, but I also just feel like in this summer, my mind has been blown by what Stranger Things has done. By like that.
The Duffer Brothers, man, get them on an MCU movie.
And I'm just like, I think Taika could have done that,
But Stranger Things is like a period thing.
I understand, yeah.
And Thor is like happening like set present day.
I guess you're right,
but
yeah, that's a good point.
But it borrows from like previous decades. Like he's like mirroring the 80s right now with his tone and like
because
music.
It's supposed to be hair fantasy metal,
right?
Which the iconography of that is like Thor, God beefcakes.
Yeah. So I personally don't think they played off of that enough.
I think that they
didn't choose a variety of options.
Honestly, like Iron Maiden would have been a better call.
Fuck yeah!
Like for this, like
I think I don't care enough about 80s metal to have like the nuanced opinions you guys are having right now.
or Thin Lizzy. All right,
that's such an in the weeds critique to me that like completely went over my head.
Yeah, stay tuned for the Patreon where it's to critique the soundtrack to this fucking movie.
I'll say quickly, like the little girl, I think that's exciting to see how that gets taken care of in the next movie.
Yeah, we need to talk about love.
Wait, they call her Love?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I think our assumption is that they're gallivanting around the galaxy together, fighting
like a superhero Calvin and Hobbes.
Unfortunately,
so he's called Thunder and she's called Love. Which going into the movie, you think
it's Jane and
Love
Thor.
and Thunder is Jane and Thor, but it turns out it's very literally this little girl, and he's.
She is Gore's daughter.
She's Gore's daughter, but Thor takes like a dad role, which is like the idea of going into a next movie with Thor being like a dad is
kind of funny.
Such like if we're talking about Taika Waititi wanting to do like something that really breaks the mold of the MCU again to kind of get people to be like, man, this guy's really turned our expectations around several times. Like a father-son or a father-daughter movie is like totally that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where he soars, is like sad, heartwarming, being funny.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if anybody cares about that character and wants to like see a whole movie with that character.
So I can't remember. Does that character exist in the comic books?
Thor's got some kids.
Okay.
But
is
that
Gore's kid?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That kid, no.
Okay, so that's interesting it's a new character for Disney Marvel to play with.
What's the
It's like Iron Lad.
Yeah.
It's like a character they introduced in the movies
God,
and then put into the
I love that you knew exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Make it canon. Make it canon.
We're gonna sell tons of paper. Oh no! If they found a way to put that kid in the comics now, it would be pre-ordered out the fucking wazoo.
Well, my Blu-ray would be worth more. It's her first appearance.
God, if people figure out how to find her first appearance
on Blu-ray, I actually have her in the deleted scenes in Ragnarok.
Well, it's that whole thing with Harley Quinn being like technically on a comic that came with a record.
Oh
yeah, that thing sells for.
Don't say that too loud. I need to sell my Batman Adventures first, and then.
All right, movie grades.
Yes,
we're going out of 10. We had a lot of discussion and deliberation.
I need to make an official statement.
Grading scale was going to be.
I, Greg Lichtai, while I want to be included in this discussion, completely disagree with the scale that we're using.
Well, so you may be familiar with 1 through 10 being a common comic grade evaluation.
I get the theme you're going for.
Was the movie near mint for you? Was it very fine?
Was it mint Jim?
Was it good?
I will jump in and say this was a solid 7.9 for me. And I would have put Ragnarok in like the 9s just to like
for people to see how you're judging things.
Yeah.
Okay. I am a 7.5 white pages direct edition.
For somebody who hates this grade scale, you've really bit on
you've
off
embraced
the metaphor.
The bit. I thought here's the thing.
Oh my God! Speaking of bits, we didn't talk about this. We're sitting in the theater, and the movie's about to start, and Mike is all of a sudden holding a newspaper, and he goes, "I'm gonna look for this scene," and he's like, "I'm really excited for it." And I look over at him, and he's like pointing to a picture in a paper that he's got like kind of holding up towards the movie screen. And I was so confused, and I just stared at him and waited a couple beats. And I was like, is this a bit? And he's just like, yeah.
So you brought like a newspaper, like you get every day to get your news late. Your old news in the paper.
I cut out a picture. I put it in my pocket. I brought it to the theater. I planned a joke.
First of all, beautiful. I love the commitment there.
I really stuck the landing.
Was people in the vicinity knew what you were doing, or
the joke was?
It was for me.
That's what I mean. But did other people peripherally just be like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?"
No one else soaked that in.
No,
that was a private joke for.
Damn.
Yeah.
Still good.
An audience of
private
one.
Prop humor just for me.
It's the best kind of prop humor. Personalized prop humor. That's the next cameo.
Just some Gallagher style humor.
I was befuddled. I was just like, what is happening right now?
Am I having a stroke? Like, what is happening? Am I in a Mr. Bean movie? Is this Naked Gun 4?
I'm glad I got you. I'm glad it made it to the.
Yeah. Okay. So, Thor, when it's good, it's really good, and when it's confused on what it is, it should have been cut.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things in here that shouldn't have made the movie, but they needed to fill time.
Okay. Yeah.
That's where I'm at with it.
Yep. I agree. 7.5 for me as well. I think if I was writing the movie, I would have just been like, Thor is unworthy. We're getting rid of Thor for a lot of this, and Jane Foster's going to be Thor, and we're going to focus on just that character.
Right.
Because two leads battling the power of Christian Bale on screen there was just a lot going on.
It's almost like Gore should have kidnapped
Thor,
and it's up to now Mighty Thor to rescue not only the children but Thor.
I think that,
I fucking forgot Heimdall had a kid.
Same.
I think there's
I would have loved the narrative too about like Thor is like the princess getting rescued.
Yeah,
kind of
totally.
That would have been awesome.
I think there's no way. I don't think Chris Hemsworth has a huge ego. I don't think he could take himself out of this franchise.
No, sure.
In that way, especially with like him being at the driver's seat slightly.
And what the fuck do I know? If I wrote this movie, it would have been dog shit.
Hey, don't talk down on yourself.
You can't do better.
You put 1,000 monkeys in a room, eventually they'll write Thor: Love and Thunder.
Our final discussion is like just in general, where do we sit with Phase 4, this movie, and how is it shaping up for them?
Yeah, essentially post Thanos.
Yes.
How's Marvel doing? Are they doing all right?
So I think what I am viewing as the consensus is like there's too much going on, especially with like the TV shows, that there's no formula. Whereas like Phase 3 was like poetic and how they just like landed it. And then here it's like, what is the through line?
Seems a little rudderless.
And it's like, are we setting up for Secret Wars? like not Secret Wars, but like
I think people are just like, are we headed towards Secret Wars? Is it Battle World? We have Kang out there still. Like, where are we all going?
There's not like a piece of the puzzle that we're getting every time towards building to something, and it just feels like everything is its own world.
I think it's gonna be like that just because there's so much money to be had and there's so many things to make that people will consume that it's impossible now to connect all of it. So I think these things are going to be a little more standalone moving forward, and that's the price we pay for getting like 8 Marvel things a year. You know what I mean? Like
it's the price we get for perfection so
like,
early.
What are we getting? We're getting like 2 or 3 movies this year and 2 or 3 TV shows, right?
Yeah, for the remainder of the year, and we're in fucking July. We have Black Panther still.
Mm-hmm.
She-Hulk comes out. Werewolf by Night comes out on Disney Plus.
Boo.
And then we have, I think, another movie beginning 2023. I think it's Quantumania with the Ant-Man.
Right.
And so I think you're right. I mean, well, let's just get out of the way. COVID kind of fucked up their trajectory a lot with what they're going to do as far as releasing movies and TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for me, in my mind, these need a focus. We had Thanos for 11 years of building up to that. We either need something that can combine and unite everyone towards a unifying thing, whether that's Galactus or Doctor Doom or something. Like, why introduce such an interconnected universe in phases 1 through 3 and then completely abandon it going forward?
But here's my thing is that the interconnectedness of Thanos and that through line and thread, like, I barely recognized until it was like retroactive, like, until it had happened.
Sure.
And everyone was like, oh, those little like weird MacGuffins in the movie, those are important now.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
but I think that they had Civil War lead into it really well. And like they kept that theme, like, and then the movies just like fit together. And if they tried to fit the movies together right now, they couldn't.
But here's my thing too, is that we said how much we like them giving these properties to really creative people and letting them do their own creative things with it.
Right, we were wrong.
We don't want that anymore.
Go back.
We need a captain.
Yeah.
We need somebody. We were wrong. That happens sometimes.
Uncancel Joss.
No, he can't remain canceled.
I may be on the opposite side of you guys. I think I'm a Phase 4 fan. I really love the TV shows. I like the amount of Marvel stuff that I'm getting.
Right.
I think it's okay that it's massive and unruly now because we're all bought in as a culture. It wouldn't just like there aren't millions of people going to see these movies that are like haven't seen almost everything else.
Right. Here's what I think on that is that I actually like there's not a bad Phase 4 movie yet. They're all great. Right?
Yeah.
I think they've been great. I think what or were you going to say sorry.
Well, I was going to say people would say Eternals.
People would say Eternals.
But I like that movie.
I think they're going to say Love and Thunder too.
Now they're going to say Love and Thunder?
I think they're going to say Eternals and Love and Thunder.
I think commercially with like non-comic fans, Love and Thunder did very well.
Okay. Good. The other thing I think that Marvel made the shift in is that they said we don't need the through line anymore. We're gonna go whole hog on TV and just put the whole hog in there.
Yeah, put the whole hog in Disney Plus. We're doing it.
And I think they did that with flying colors. I think like we will look back on Phase 4 and be like, Marvel killed streaming in a time in COVID when it mattered. And like they just executed that well. They didn't have a through line. They didn't like
sure.
And that's fine.
I think still that there's potential for one of these forthcoming movies for us to be like, oh, it all makes sense now.
I think you're right.
Like, oh, this thing that happened in Loki is now like a reason this happens, and then
I don't think so because there would have been a Loki nod at all in Love and Thunder.
Well, if we think back to Phase 1 of Marvel, there was no nods to anything except at the very end we see Thanos for the first time. It's like he's like at the second stinger.
Yeah,
we just see a purple person, and we're like, oh my god, that's Hellboy.
Well,
it's a shout out to Adam.
WandaVision is like a prequel to Doctor Strange.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
like those two things were like completely connected.
So I think you're right there, but I don't.
And Loki is a setup to Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. I mean, it set up the multiverse.
I just don't think that they're going to be able to connect all of the...
We argued about this. Multiverse and timelines are two different things. Right?
Yes. Okay, we did argue about that, yeah.
Okay. I could still be wrong, but I hold that the timeline splintering and multiple universes are different
Here's
things.
what Marvel has done, though, which I love. They have made it possible to be the uber nerd in the last 2 years that's like all knowledgeable about Phase 4 because you've watched everything and you know more than other people. And it used to be in the hands of the comic book readers.
Yeah.
And it no longer is. And I like that.
As far as movies go?
Sure. Like the nerddom. The nerddom of Marvel is now owned by the person that has too much time on their hands to watch all the streaming shit.
Nice.
You.
Us. We're a family.
Oh, so can I... I'm sorry, I'm getting caught up on this. Through line we haven't mentioned is Monica Rambeau.
Yeah.
Who...
will be showing up.
Was in WandaVision. Was in Doctor Strange. Will be in The Marvels. I'm assuming is going to get some sort of nod in the last episode of Miss Marvel. I might be wrong. But I'd imagine the end of that show would set up The Marvels, which is the movie that's coming out. Right?
Yeah.
So she's kind of been a through line through a handful of these things.
Okay. Who's the bad guy in Marvels?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know.
Okay.
I'm assuming more
Kree.
Skrull or Kree, yeah.
Stuff.
And so, but we are getting that Secret Invasion show with Daenerys, what's her face, from Game of Thrones.
Oh, cool.
So that could be, I mean, money's on anything right now as far as who the next super
villain
problem's going to be.
I love that they haven't brought back Captain America or Iron Man.
Well, Sam Wilson is Captain America now.
Right. Sorry, traditional.
You're thinking like Chris Evans.
Yeah. That they're just like not gonna, and that's probably Jane Foster's now dead. Like, and not.
She's in Valhalla, confirmed with one of
yeah.
those end credit scenes.
There we go. Yeah.
Which I thought was a kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
Like she died a worthy death.
Yep.
And it was said earlier in the film when Thor was talking to Sif, he was just like,
battle.
"If you die in battle, a worthy death, you are escorted into the gates of Valhalla."
And I also loved that. Go ahead.
I was gonna say they posed it in a way where he was like, "You can stay with the gods if you'd like." It was almost like there was an or.
Yeah, you're
right. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The way he phrased that, I was like, "Is he gonna say or?"
Yeah.
Like it was almost
Shane's
like,
well, is there a Christian heaven? Because
was
this isn't a lowercase t, Heimdall.
Was the option to stay with the gods in like their like cool party house or like a lot over?
Oh yeah.
Or was it to like go back to life or something? You know what I mean?
If you're
I don't know.
if you're not
we have some property adjacent to Valhalla.
Exactly.
If you're not a Marvel head and you see the reveal of Hercules, do you think who the fuck cares?
Yes.
Okay.
Even as a Marvel head, I said, who the fuck cares?
Okay.
We have the popular character from Ted Lasso portraying Hercules, which he is not well known.
The character is playing Hercules. We want to be clear.
Yeah, Hercules isn't a person that actually exists in the real world.
Thank you for that clarification.
It's the guy.
I forget his name, but he plays like a soccer player in
Yes.
Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's crazy that this is a prequel to The Northman, the movie that came out right before this.
Oh my god. Got him.
Got him. Yeah.
Well, were you guys shocked by the Hercules?
I didn't know that was going to happen, and I like him a lot, so I was like, cool.
I think the actor's great.
Yeah.
I could give a shit about Hercules in general.
I think Hercules is funny to me because it's like this Marvel thing that you always have to be like, oh yeah, like he's a character. And like, did he ever get his own line?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's got his own limited.
He has. Okay.
And he was popular during the No Surrender storyline that happened a few years ago.
Am I doesn't he use sticks? Am I remembering?
He has like a hammer. Like he uses tools and other weapons. Like he's Hercules.
Okay.
From the Greek mythology.
I thought he had like batons. So I don't know why.
Deadpool does that, and so does Daredevil.
I'm familiar.
Well, I'm just making sure you know comic books.
You're going to look it up. Hercules sticks.
Wow, that's interesting.
He's doing the juggling thing with the 3 sticks. What do they call that? The fire sticks.
Oh my god, what are those called? Like
devil
sticks.
Devil sticks, yeah.
Come to me, Thor. I'm going to get you with my devil sticks.
That's his whole thing.
He just keeps dropping them. Damn it.
But I remember Hercules kind of being like a full of himself kind of character. And I don't see I only know that guy from Ted Lasso, so I don't see him playing. He's such a badass in that show that I don't see him playing someone who's like so cocky and arrogant.
Yeah, I think it's just gonna be 2 meatheads fighting it out.
Yeah,
like he's now like Hercules is basically just like a hitman. Oh, they're maces.
Yeah, sorry, I knew he had some type of weird weapon. It's like a lantern looking.
You said sticks. I thought you meant like actual
batons.
Did.
I had pictured it wrong. Yes, I did, but all right.
It's interesting. I'm eager to see what happens with that. It eludes me to think Secret Wars is coming. Because in Secret
There's just
Wars,
a lot of realms.
They're just all in a big area and fucking fight each other.
Yeah,
it's a great way to introduce the black suit for Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to introduce Fantastic Four.
Silver Surfer.
Amazing way to introduce Fantastic Four.
And yeah, Silver Surfer and Adam Warlock, because he's going to be showing up in the 3rd volume of Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's right. I forgot there was a Adam Warlock cocoon in one of the post-credit scenes.
Yeah, and they said, we'll call him and Adam.
Yeah, nothing ever happened.
Yeah, did you guys ever? You know who's playing Adam Warlock?
No.
So, did you guys ever see the movie Meet the Millers with
Jason
Sudeikis? And anyway, one of the sons in that is Adam Warlock, and he looks good. I mean, he looks good with his shirt off, which is all you need to be to be Adam Warlock. And the Hulk. So, all in all,
we'll be back for Black Adam.
No, we won't. Nope.
That trailer looked bad.
It looked so shitty. Looked terrible.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy shitting on DC movies,
but
that do not look good.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, you thought Pierce Brosnan was going to be a big draw, but no.
All right. Love and Thunder breaking our summer little break.
See you soon?
Yeah.
Ish.
First Issue Club is brought to you by Boulevard Brewing Company via Space Camper Cosmic IPA. Our music is courtesy of the fine folks at Primary Color Music. You can find, friend, and follow us on social media at First Issue Club or firstissueclub.com. You can support First Issue Club by joining us on our Patreon for additional content at patreon.com/firstissueclub.